Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the morning scan for September 2nd, 2020. If you're new to these videos, in these videos I kind of just ramble, look at different charts, and think out loud. So whatever I see on the chart, I just kind of talk about and discuss however I'm feeling about that. So firstly, I just wanted to start off with Bitcoin here and talk about why I highlighted these different areas. And my computer is extremely laggy right now, as you can see from the cursor. I have no idea why. But anyway, so why I highlighted these areas of highs? Okay, so we set our top here, right? We had our swing high, set our top. So we had a distribution top for a few hours before we saw a sell-off. Okay, sell-off below the equilibrium, bounced a little bit above. We set highs here. Dump to the range low, bounce from the range low, set highs again. Now these two areas of highs, we had untapped liquidity above there. So what that means is if someone was in a short position, let's say they shorted, I don't know, like below the equilibrium here, when that flipped into resistance after this little dump here, they would potentially place their stop loss above the set of highs here. Same idea here. Maybe you shorted, below the equilibrium again, place your stop loss above the set of highs here, and proceed to see a dump. Okay, so lastly, our last set of highs was we put in this low here, the swing high here. Again, if you shorted maybe the range low or something like that, you could potentially place your stop loss above there. So if you guys didn't know, my trading is mainly based on liquidity. So that's really the thought process I go through. I really look for where is the most amount of liquidity that price is easiest for it to get to. I think that makes sense, right? Anyway, so that's essentially what I'm looking for. I'm just looking for untapped areas of liquidity. So I highlighted those three areas on the chart here. I also want to highlight 12,165 because that is the previous swing high before we topped out, and that was a significant breakout, right? That was also a significant area of resistance. So I just wanted to highlight that as well because that will play a role when price gets back up there. All right, so what we saw here is firstly we created the low here. Now this is going to be important, these untapped lows here. I'll talk about that in a few minutes, but these untapped lows here are important, which is why I have them highlighted here. But anyway, where was I going with that? Okay, so we created the low here, swing high here, right? Eventually broke the high, flipped it into support. So that's a good sign. Flipped it into support. So now what we could have done is entered into a long position. I've been pretty vocal about not knowing what the hell Bitcoin is going to do for the next move or the next few moves. I still pretty much feel like that. I don't want to get ahead of myself here. But anyway, so we flipped this into support. Okay. So now this was not actionable for me because sure, we flipped the first high into support, but we're also smushed right below that equilibrium. So I mean, thinking about it, where could I have longed to? I mean, if I put my stop below the range low, which is typical, where am I going to take profit? 150 points away. If I was scalping and I could have had a tighter stop, maybe, but I really didn't see an opportunity to place a tighter stop here. That would have just been a major risk. Knowing me, I probably would have placed a stop probably like right below here. Of course, that just looks too perfect because it just barely didn't wick into that. Maybe in the moment I wouldn't have placed that stop there, but anyway, still not a trade I would have taken for the group at least. That's maybe something I would have taken on my own time and not shared it. But anyway, so that's why I said that there's nothing really actionable for me on a higher time frame when this flipped into support. What would have been actionable is if we grinded up above the equilibrium and flipped it into support, very similar to how this looks here. Okay, see, we grinded back up, flipped it into support, held it for a few hours, then continued to move up. So if we saw that same kind of movement above the equilibrium, I probably would have longed that because, again, that would have given me a lot of wiggle room because the equilibrium is 50% of the trading range, so I could have just placed a stop below this swing high, which is definitely what I would have done. This is a setup that is pretty typical for me. And then my take profit probably would have been this first set of highs here. I would have had to tighten this up a little bit, so it could have been worth it. I mean, again, is this even going to be worth it? Probably not. That would have been a really tight stop off the equilibrium. So again, nothing really actionable. But regardless, if this was a little bit higher and the range was a little bit larger, this is a setup I would take any day of the week. Okay, so we saw a swing high before a move up. That swing high flipped into support. If you're entering into a long, your stop loss will be below that swing high, and your take profit is, I don't know, the range high, somewhere above the range high, and then maybe the local top or something like that. That's something I would take very, very often. All right, so again, nothing actionable off the equilibrium because we didn't see the retest of support there, similar to what we saw here. Now all we have is our two sets of highs left. Okay, so we have a really fat 4-hour candle that takes both of those set of highs. This is not bearish in any way because we saw little to no wick whatsoever, and it totally engulfed those sets of highs. Okay, so we saw some take profits here, a very small sell-off candle, not really much. I would just say that's people taking profit off of long positions, maybe from the range low or something similar. Then we saw another fat 4-hour candle. But if you notice, we did retest that second high before moving up. Okay, so that gives more of a base to my argument of being bullish and flipping all of these into support. Created the top at the range high, and now we have our sell-off here. There is some FUD from Korea. I think Bit something, one of their exchanges, BitThumb maybe, was raided by police. I mean, I don't really want to make anything up. I'm pretty sure that's what I read. I maybe should have read that before I started this video. Could that play a role in this? Yes, absolutely. But at the same time, we were at resistance at the range high. We did take all of these highs here. So I would definitely say that contributed to the sell-off. Is that the main reason why we had this massive sell-off? I mean, your guess is as good as mine. No one will ever know. Okay, so now what? That's really the question on everyone's mind. Now what? So if you notice here, we did flip the range low into resistance now. Let's see how it looks on the hourly. Okay, still too early to say if we flip it into resistance. But the next area of interest, if the range low isn't reclaimed very quickly. So basically what I would be looking for is a dump and then just a grind right back up. So if we were to grind back up above the first set of highs here, obviously these are now tapped highs, so they're not untapped highs, but it still most likely will be an area of resistance. So if we do grind up, we'll probably see some stalling below this high traffic area before a potential reclaim. On this reclaim, now is something I would long, and my first take profit would most likely be the second or third set of highs. Because think about this. Okay, so we saw this slow grind up into a dump, right? Stairs up, elevator down. So now what we could possibly see is a grind back up, but without the elevator down. So that's why I wouldn't be, I wouldn't say that nothing is actionable. I would say that this is going to be actionable. I'd probably set my stop loss something like here, and this is the setup I would take. Something very similar. Most likely what we'll see is some sort of consolidation above the highs again, and that will maybe help pinpoint an entry and stop loss a bit better. But something like that is something I would take, right? This is going to be a major supply area based on the dump we saw, so that's going to be an area to look out for. But that's obviously the bullish scenario. The bearish scenario is to flip the range low into resistance and not break back above the range low. And then my next target would be these lows here. So these have been untapped since the middle of August. Okay, so that's something, those lows are lows that are on my mind. So typically what I would look for is something like this, basically a sell-off. I mean, we already saw our first sell-off. What I would be looking for is maybe a little bit of chop before another leg down, wick hard into that low, maybe even consolidate for an hour or two below before springing right back up. That would be a very clean setup, so look out for that. If we do have a second leg down, Look for consolidation below these lows for a couple hours, and a spring. If we spring back above, that will really be potentially a really good setup, because what you could do is, let's say we spring back above, I don't know, something like this. We wick hard below this low. My stop loss would be below this low, because there would technically be no reason to revisit this low, right? Because all of that liquidity would be taken. So what would be the point of retesting that low from a liquidity standpoint? There's going to be, I mean, obviously less people that are in long positions, right? So we'll stop all those out, potentially spring back above, and then something like this I would take. So flip this back into support, long here, stop loss below this low, and the first take profit would be the equilibrium. Okay, and this would be a trade you would really have to pay attention to. You can't kind of just let this run, because it can go for another leg down. But I guess that's another bullish scenario. But definitely keep an eye on these lows. If these lows fail and turn into resistance, so if we see something like this, we consolidate for a few hours below, try and spring back above, fail, come back below, that's something I would look to short with a take profit of, oh geez, I don't even know, let's see, with a take profit probably at like 10 point, what is this, 4? Yeah, 10.4 is, I really like 10.4. I'm not sure if we'll get it. 10.4 is nice. 10.2 is nice. We'll see if we get it. Who knows? But that's an area of interest as well. I was talking about that on the Zoom call we had with Pierre and a friend of the group, Bagsy, which I'm sure you all know. We talked about that on the Zoom call. And basically what I said, and it was a common consensus, is that it's really fun to see all of these green candles, right, in Bitcoin pump a lot. But the really big issue with that is you establish no support on the way up. No solid support, I would say, on the way up. And that's an issue, because you could have a pretty fat few $100 candle and it will look extremely ugly on the chart. But, I mean, it would be testing the first major area of support in a few $100s. So, again, it will look ugly, but it really would be bullish. If that makes any sense, it wouldn't really be as bad as it looks, only because we established no high time frame support on the way up. Okay, so that's basically what I'm looking for. If this were to fail, we would have a long way down to go to 10.4 to 10.2. Will it fail? I really don't know. To see this grind right back up would be absolute typical Bitcoin. To maybe even go for these lows here, wick really hard into these lows, reclaim, spring back above, consolidate, and just grind right back up, and then break out above the local high. That would really be typical Bitcoin and something that I'm looking for to happen. But again, I know I missed this entire move because I didn't know what was happening, but I feel like that's another situation. Like I don't know what's going to happen with Bitcoin here. I have different trade setups I'm looking for, which I highlighted in this video. So if any of those happen, I'll be pulling the trigger on those trades. But for now, I mean, I truly believe it's too early to say. And if you were to enter here, it would just be a gamble, really, because we are flipping the range low into resistance. But at the same time, we already saw a significant sell-off already. So, again, it could go up or down. I felt like I did a good job explaining my thought process in this video. I'm sorry if I stuttered here and there or there's some dead air, but I just had a lot that I wanted to get out. I'm pretty sure I spoke about everything I wanted to. I wanted to go through different altcoins as well, but this video is already getting a little bit too long. I guess I was just rambling too much on Bitcoin. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, please let me know. I'll make more of these in the future. I hope you all have a great rest of your day. Thank you.